Welcome back, everybody, to Clearwater Jazz Holidays Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. I'm Steve Weinberger. I'm the CEO of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, and you are participating today or listening and watching in the future as part of a series we call the Conversation with series, and we are joined by saxophonist, educator, composer, Mike Tucker. Mike, how you doing?
I'm great. Great. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Mike. And Jeremy Carter, who will tune in just a second, is our longtime education friend and partner, and also an incredible musician here in the Tampa Bay area that is seen quite actively as part of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Music Festival activities. More recently, our Wanderlust music series that takes place in a variety of different outdoor, open air, a little bit smaller scale venues, but have been really, really popular with our community. And Jeremy Carter Rubber Band and some other things have just been a joy to have participating as part of that. Jeremy is one of the most sought after saxophonists around these parts, and has traveled all over the place and played with some incredible people. So he also has a real special heart for education and outreach, and has participated in not only our History of Jazz outreach program, which brings a professional jazz band into schools to tell the story of jazz, but also our My Journey with Jazz program in neighborhood family centers and more economically challenged pockets of our community, as well as the Young Lions Jazz Master Sessions, which brings really special experiences to students of music, really from all around Florida, and now with these virtual sessions all throughout the United States and around the world. So it's great to have Jeremy with us, and it's really exciting to have Mike Tucker with us. I can't wait to learn about some of his experiences. Knowing about Mike and reading more about him in preparation for today, it was just so cool to see all of the folks that he has collaborated with and played with. He's performed also all over the world, and with a lot of folks that have graced the stage at Clearwater Jazz Holiday, which is really cool to see. And I just can't thank Mike enough for being part of this today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy, pin him real quick to say, what's up, Jeremy?
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Yeah, no, it's so great to see Jeremy back here. And I want to thank, before we get started, certain sponsors that help to present the studio, where all of these are archived after the fact: Blue Water Wealth Management at Steward Partners and Duke Energy, as well as the podcast presented by our friends at Marine Max Clearwater. So we really appreciate everybody believing in what we're doing and building this great treasure. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy to take a little bit deeper dive with Mike, and just so happy to have you guys with us.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Many thanks to everybody over at the Clearwater Jazz Holiday for providing this resource for everyone. This has been such a treat. I'm so delighted to have our guest today, Mike Tucker. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Great. Yeah, well, I mean, we're building up quite an archive here with so many different artists. We've had Sam Dillon in, Joe Fromm, Terrace Martin, Jeff Vidal. I mean, and now Mike Tucker. I mean, as a sax player,
a lot of sax players.
I'm covering the sax end of the program, but yeah, I really am delighted. I've been checking you out, just kind of following along with different stuff that you have going on, and you're definitely one of my favorite sax players out there.
Oh, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, just many thanks for everything that you're doing out there to contribute to the sax community and the music community, on a broader scale. More recently, you can see Mike playing with Arturo Sandoval and his group.
It's been a while now.
It's been a little while, but there are a lot of cooking performances out there that you can find with Mike playing with Arturo, and I'm sure that very soon you'll see them in a city near you.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mike, just to kick things off, for everybody that is not familiar with you and your work, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in music in terms of your education and
Sure, sure. Well, I got started in music. The first thing I ever did was, I went to church as a kid, and the choir director at church, I started like kind of singing in the choir. She taught me like a song on piano, and I just kind of fell in love with music from then on. I was probably about 6 years old. And then like, I was singing in choir. I loved, at the time, like I was listening to like rock music and stuff. Like I really loved like Bon Jovi and like all the stuff, all the artists that were like, famous in the early 80s, like 1985, 1986, 1987, hair bands, all that sort of stuff.
A lot of energy.
Yeah. And then I guess I think I was probably in like fourth grade, and we had an opportunity to start playing an instrument in school. And I started playing alto sax when I was in fourth grade, and I loved it. Like many kids today, probably too. Like I hadn't really heard that like saxophone in that much music, in the 80s, there were like, there was some like pop sax solos and stuff. So it was like a little more common, but it probably wasn't until I was like maybe in seventh grade or so, seventh or eighth grade. My band director, we ended up doing like the tune, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. And me and my friend started going to our high school library and to the town library, excuse me. And back then, I don't even know if this exists anymore. It probably doesn't. There'd be no point. You have Spotify and everything's online. I'm 40. I just turned 42. So, this is back in the dark ages. We'd go to the town library, and every time we were assigned a new song, we would try to find like the recordings, and we started like renting out jazz albums. Like they didn't have many CDs back then, because CDs were still kind of new. Yeah. So we'd get the albums and like rent them out, and we just started listening to like one of the first albums we ever listened to was Ella and Louie. So I started just listening to jazz albums, and then we just kind of fell in love with the music, and then it just kind of went from there. Then I got really into, I went to like a camp when I was a kid. I was probably like 14. It was a camp called Sims up in New Hampshire, up at the University of New Hampshire. Okay. And, at the time, like I was pretty good. Like, I was like maybe one of the better players in my high school. Then I went to this camp, and I heard like, I don't know if you guys familiar with like Ryan Kaiser.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's in the Lincoln Center band.
Yeah, so like his brother Justin, who's also amazing, but like hasn't reached the level of fame that his brother is, was like in high school at the time, and he was at that camp along with like just maybe like 6 or 7 or like 10, like a handful of other players like of that caliber. They were like like at like a near professional level in high school. Yeah. And like I heard those guys, and I was just like super inspired, and that's really like when I was like, okay, I'm gonna do music. I was like 14, and I just started practicing like a ton, because I was just so inspired, and just hearing like players like that like got me like just really inspired to practice. I just really wanted to like try to attain that level. So I started practicing like 5 or 6 hours a day when I was like 15, like 14, 15.
No social life, just sex.
Pretty much, man. Like literally, like, yeah, I was pretty, pretty much just attached to my horn. Like from the time I was like 14 until like maybe like 17, like I practiced like 5 or 6 hours, like every day. Like I stayed at the school. School would get out at like 2. I would stay at the school until like 8 and practice. So I kind of got bit by the bug, man, and like just went from there. I don't know. I don't want to talk too long about this.
No, absolutely. You embrace the experience. So for the kids that are listening, because the kids who do excel, who go on to participate in different activities outside of just their school band, you're going to run into that situation where there's going to be a lot of other good players on every instrument. And instead of, running away or being intimidated from the experience, absolutely embrace it as an opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, when I heard that, I guess you could take a situation like that, like in multiple ways, you could hear one of those players and be like, all right, that's it. Pack up the horn and you're done, Trust me, I felt like that in times of my life too, of course.
Right.
But for whatever reason, like, when I heard the people at this camp when I was like 14 years old, I was just like, man, like, I think I can like do that. But I was like, I knew it would be like a lot of work, but yeah, man, those were the beginnings, and then after that, it was just kind of like, I just kept practicing and, ended up doing like all state, all Eastern, like Grammy band, all that stuff. I did all these things in high school that were like really kind of pivotal, important experiences for me, so like, the thing that you guys are doing, I'm assuming do you guys have like bands when it's not COVID? Like, do you have is there like a band that you guys rehearse, or is it all like you guys go to school programs, or how's it work?
Yeah, we go into school programs and offer some scholarships and ways to help out with kids as they transition to the next level. But we don't, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit more, Steve?
Yeah, sure. So, it started out about 5 years ago, I think, where we created an event called the Young Lions Jazz Master Sessions, which was a large event at a performing arts center here called Ruth Eckerd Hall. And it's adjoining a smaller theater that's there in classrooms. And we would invite high school jazz ensembles from around the state of Florida, so local, and it'd be invitational because we couldn't accommodate too many bands.
Right.
But we had a pretty decent amount, between 8 and 10 different groups participating, and there would be group clinics in the morning where you'd have a variety of different university jazz educators and local professionals offering feedback to group performances, and then group clinics. And then in the afternoon, all of the instruments would blend together. And so you'd have all the trumpets together from all the schools, saxophones, trombone. We do like a rhythm section special area as well. And it really is less about a competition. It's more about a shared experience. And we had a really neat format with that, where we began to see other band directors could benefit from creating that same experience, but at a smaller scale, more concentrated, for a 2 or 3 hour visit to a school with 8 or 9 educators and professionals that are all funded and supported by the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation. And Jeremy has been part of that as sort of a faculty member, helping to deliver those experiences. There is a special funding element of it too, with scholarships and money for band programs, but that's kind of that's really what the Jazz Master Sessions is. And this virtual path is just sort of an offshoot of a creative way we've adapted it during the pandemic.
Got it. That's great. Yeah. So like for all the high school, musicians that are listening out there, I think like for me, it was really important to like seek out like as many opportunities outside of my school. I went to a school that didn't really have like a strong jazz program. They had we had an okay jazz band, but it was like more focused on marching bands. Like it was more focused on marching. So it was really important for me to like find like where are my people? You know what I mean? From the time I was like maybe 15 on, all of my time, like outside of school, like on the weekends and stuff, I grew up in Danvers, which is a suburb of Boston. I lived like a half an hour outside of Boston. So all of my time would be like, I'd go into Boston every weekend because that's where all my friends that played jazz were, So, I kind of found my people early, and that was really pivotal for me. I work with an organization that's kind of it sounds like you guys have a lot more going on than us. I mean, I basically do a very simple thing. So like every year, twice a year, I have a group of kids that live on the North Shore of Massachusetts. And we started this about 10 years ago. It was started through a grant from this guy. I don't know if you guys know, I shouldn't mention the name, but the company, do you guys know IMN, International Music Network? It's a really big booking agency. It's actually the agency that, well, no, Arturo's booked by Ted Kurland. It's the other big jazz booking agency. Like they used to book like Esperanza and Herbie and like everybody. So anyways, they're located on the North Shore, and they donated like a generous grant to kind of start this thing off, and basically approached me. This is like 10 years ago, and said, can you put together like a band of high school kids from the North Shore? And I was like, yeah, sure. So that started about 10 years ago. And now we since the pandemic, we haven't been able to meet, but for 10 years, we put on 2 concerts a year. So one would be like, and I'd hold auditions. Usually every year we'd have like 50, 60, 70 kids audition. And then I'd select the kids, we'd put together a big band of 16 kids or so. And then we'd meet twice a year. And that was kind of, the opportunity kind of like fell on me. Like I got lucky to just, be in the right, someone just approached me to do it. But then I was like, oh man, this is awesome, because now I get to connect all these kids that like live in a similar area, but might not go to the same school. Maybe they just wouldn't meet each other any other way. And man, guess what? Like through playing in this band, like all the kids that go through this program, like every 3 or 4 years is like a crew of kids that like meet each other. And then they start doing the thing that I did in high school. They start like, their own thing, so outside of the organization. And, like every year there's like, there's probably 3 or 4 kids out of that band that end up going to top music schools, Berkeley, Juilliard, NEC, like, it's really cool. It's really cool. So yeah.
Yeah, so when you were in college, like obviously you got to work with a lot of faculty members that they brought in, but who was like the guy or girl that just really got you like, okay, this is starting to make sense to me?
When I was in college?
Yeah.
Man, my path was a little different. So like by the time I was in college, I was already like, I was kind of, so I went to school right after high school. I went to a school called William Patterson. Great, it's like basically like a more of a localized school in Wayne, New Jersey, but like has this outstanding jazz program. Like Carl Allen went there, Eric Alexander, lots of great alumni. I went there for a year. And man, like halfway through the year, I got like severe debilitating tendonitis. So like I had to stop school first of all, because like I couldn't, if you're going to like a performing school and you can't perform, you can't play your instrument, it doesn't really work, right? So I basically my life took like a big detour for like a few years. So like I basically like I had to figure out like how I was going to heal the tendonitis. I went to doctors, did all sorts of stuff. None of it, like, the thing that really worked for me was this thing called the Alexander technique. It's like this mind body, like sort of method of dealing with basically postural habits. So a lot of times when you get like repetitive injury syndromes, repetitive use syndrome, like carpal tunnel, tendonitis, things like that, a lot of times it comes through like habits of bad posture.
Wow.
So like when I would play, like I had this neck strap around my neck and I'd, probably be like this, my shoulders would be tense. So basically, like I had to like kind of relearn how to like use my body in like in a more, kind of ergonomic way. And then that like through studying the Alexander technique for a few years, then I started to get better, but it took a couple years, man. It was a scary time for me because like I had set out to become a musician, and like there was like a couple years there where I wasn't sure, I was like, maybe I'm gonna have to do something else. So, but luckily, I studied Alexander technique for like 2 years. It took me a year to find a teacher that was like really good. I tried like 6 different teachers, and I found an amazing teacher. I studied with her for like a year. My tendonitis got way better. I was able to start practicing again. And then I actually went to school to train to become an Alexander technique teacher. So I like went to school for 3 years. Like it's like a 1,500 hour training course. It's like 5 days a week, 3 hours a day for 3 years, So I did that. And while I was doing that, my tendonitis like got better. It's practicing while I was in the Alexander technique training school. I actually like my friend, do you guys know Warren Wolf, the vibraphonist?
Oh, absolutely.
My friend Warren, we were on a gig in Gloucester. We were playing like this little restaurant, like in this little seafaring town. We used to play there like every Wednesday and Thursday or something. And he was like, hey man, he's like, the monk competition, they're doing saxophone this year. He's like, you should do it. I was like, what? I was like, man, come on. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, I'm not going to make that. He's like, dude, do it, make a tape, back then it was tapes, make a tape. So it was 2002. So I did it. I put together a thing, and I ended up being a semi-finalist in the monk competition. I was like one of 10 guys. It was the year that Seamus Blake won. So it was Seamus, Marcus Strickland, John Ellis, all those guys. Yeah. So I was in the monk thing like that year. And then like, things kind of turned around for me. Like, so like, then I auditioned at Berkeley. I got a full scholarship, which was like just unbelievable because my folks didn't have the money to like, to help me with school. It's just kind of, just wasn't really in the question. In the picture. So I was able, then I was able to go back to school, and because I was doing the Alexander technique training course, I asked them to hold my scholarship for 2 years. Okay. So I got the scholarship when I was like 21 when I did the monk thing. And then they held it for 2 years. And then I went back to school when I was like 23. And by that time I'd already been on the road. I'd already like, I was already like a full-time working musician. And then I went back, like I was teaching at like maybe 3 or 4 different schools. I was playing with like this big, like event band that we traveled like all over the US, like doing like
shows.
Yeah. We used to go down to Florida all the time and play at Trump's place way before he was president,
Yeah.
Anyways. So
we almost detoured.
Let's talk about music. Let's talk about music. Okay. Let's not go there. Okay. So anyways, So by the time I got to school, and then really importantly, before I went to school, I studied with this unbelievable teacher. So the first teacher that like, where I was like, oh my God, like this guy, like I can learn like everything I need to know from this guy. So there was a guy that lived on the North Shore. His name was Charlie Bennett. He passed away, man, tragically, like pretty young. I think he was like 60 or something. He got, very aggressive form of cancer. I think he had pancreatic cancer. But when I was 16, I was already playing like kind of like professionally. I was like, we'd play at like bars and stuff, and we'd make like $50, that sort of thing, get free food, and no beers back then. Anyways, when I was 16, I was playing at this place, and this pianist who was a professional pianist I really looked up to, he was like, man, so what are your plans after high school? Like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I want to go to Berkeley. And he's like, man, it's like, don't go to Berkeley. Listen, I'm going to give you this number. Call him tomorrow and put your name on his waiting list. This is Charlie Bennett. He's one of the greatest teachers ever, but his waiting list is like 3 or 4 years long. So if you put it on now, he'll call you when your name comes up. So I did it. I put my name on his waiting list, and then I forgot about it. And then I was like 21. Yeah. And like all of a sudden the phone rings. I'm like at my grandmother's. I was at my grandmother's house. The phone rings. I answer the phone. "Hey man, is this Mike?" I was like, "Yeah." "This is Charlie Banakis, man. Your name came up on my list." He's like, "You ready to study? I got an 8 p.m. slot on Monday."
Beautiful.
I was like, okay, great. So anyways, so I started studying with this guy, Charlie Banakis, when I was 21, and it was like life-changing. I mean, like I learned almost more than I learned in like 6 years of school, like going to like undergrad and master's degree with Charlie in like 2 or 3 years. You know, this guy was just amazing. Like,
Did he have recordings or anything like that, or was he just an instructor?
So he was crazy, man. Like he was very, very protective of his information.
Oh.
And his family still is. And like, you know, Gary I don't know how to say his last name. Gary Versace, the pianist.
Right.
He was one of his main students, and he's also partners with like his family to kind of like, you know, hold on to like Charlie's information. So he never wrote a book. He never did a video. If you recorded lessons, like he was like, man, like you cannot share this with anybody, you know, like he was really like, yeah, like his methods were like kind of secret. Yeah. But he, you know, Michael Brecker studied with him. Danielo Perez studied with him. Like, you know, there's just a long list of like just amazing musicians that kind of came through and studied with Charlie. But, you know, his main thing was this. I walked into his teaching studio and it was weird. It was like in an office park. Like, you know, it's like in an office park, and I pull in, and I think my time was actually like 8:30 or 9. You know, it was late. Like it was like at the end of the day. And he taught 5 days a week from 8 in the morning until like 9 at night.
Jeez.
And he had a 4-year-long waiting list. I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
And he had correspondence students that he would they'd send tapes back and forth and like letters, like to Japan and like all over the place. So
wow.
I walked into his teaching studio, and he was like, "Hey man, so let me hear you play." He's like, "So let's do a blues. B. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know." So like, you know, right out of the gates, he wanted to see, can you play in like, you know, in lots of like, you know, hard keys and stuff. That went okay. It was fine. I had already practiced things in all 12 keys, like a lot at that point. Right. And then he was like, okay. He's like, pretend like you're playing at like, he named a restaurant that was in the North End of Boston. And I'm like, you know, the Angulo, like mob boss, you know, and I want to hear like a beautiful ballad, like really lyrical, really beautiful. Like, I don't want like a lot of notes. I want you to play with like lots of lyricism, and you better, because if not, you know what's going to happen. So he sat there and then he's like, pick a ballad. So I played Body and Soul, and that was my diagnosis. He's like a doctor. Like, you know, you walk in, he like checks your vitals, you know, he like kind of like does all this stuff. And then he was like, okay, I know what we got to do. He's like, you know, you're playing all the stuff you play. It's like really linear. It's all kind of like based on like bebop vocabulary, which was true at the time. Like I had transcribed tons of Train, Johnny Griffin, Sonny Rollins from like a very certain era. And that's kind of how I was sounding. He's like, we need to open you up to like more kind of like intervallic things. So here, and then he gave me my first assignment, and we worked on, basically his whole concept was like, whatever you're good at, he wanted you to like work on all your weaknesses. It's like,
right.
So, and every student that studied with him got different stuff, you know? So like, you know, there's like a whole cult. I mean, you can go online. There's a web page, I think on Facebook or something. It's like Students of Charlie Banakis, but you have to have been a student. But there's thousands of members. You have to have been a student to be let into the page. It's like a jazz cult, you know? But anyways, he was incredible. He was so influential. He had this method of ear training that he would do that was really incredible. And all of his students would always be like, so how many notes are you on? So, you know, basically he'd do this. He would, let me turn around. I got my piano here. He would do this. He'd play 2-5-1. Oh no, 1-6-2-5-1. Sorry. So he'd go like, and then he'd play a note. He'd be like, so what is that note in the key of C? Right? So
yeah.
what note is that? And you'd listen to it and you'd be like, oh, it's flat
F
6.
sharp.
Oh, it was an A flat. It was flat six in the key of C, you know? And then then as you get more advanced, you do and then it would be like, you know, and you'd have to name the notes in order and tell them say how they function in the key. Like what it's like, you know, F is 4 in the key of C, B flat is flat 7. So anyways, I got up to like 4 notes or something, but you know,
being able to like analyze the harmony or yeah.
And how it is in relation in the key of C. So that was like that was one big, you know, that happened every week. That's how the lesson started. They're like, okay, man, let's check your ears out. It's like, you know, like a doctor, you know, let's check your ears out. So, and, you know, I would just, you know, the way that I would practice it is I would make recordings and play the progression, then play the notes. I'd leave a little bit of space and then I'd say what the notes were that I played. But, you know, he had students. I have my friend Adam Birnbaum, really great pianist. He's actually, he just took over he's in the Vanguard Orchestra now. He's the pianist for Vanguard Orchestra. But he was a student of Charlie's, and I think he got up to 10 notes. I mean, we're talking, you know.
Yeah.
You know. Just random, not chords, like just whatever it is. And that was his whole thing. You know, he wanted you to like kind of be able to hear pitches in relation to a key, you know. So that, you know, that method of ear training was really big. So yeah, he was my first like really influential jazz teacher. I had a great saxophone teacher in high school too. And like, you know, through like middle school and stuff. This guy named Wayne Dempsey, he was like, you know, just the old school, like just, you know, tradesman of a saxophonist. You know, he had all his doubles just killing, like played clarinet, flute, oboe, bassoon, like, you know, all the saxophones. He played like piano, like he actually even played a little bit of violin because like he was like from the generation of the guys that came before him that were like, you know, like back then, like in the 90s, you know, the guys who were like 80, you know, like doubled on violin. All the saxophonists back in the day doubled in violin. So like his teacher when he was younger was like, you got to double on violin. So he played a little bit of violin. You know, he had a great sound, you know, could play jazz, but would never teach me jazz. He never, like, it's so frustrating. So like all through high school, I had to teach myself. He's like, man, it's like, you got to learn how to read. You got to learn how to read. You got to learn how to like, you know, articulate. You can't sight read well. We got to work on sight reading every week. You know, wanted me to get my doubles together. I tried clarinet. I was just like, nah, like I never really got my doubles together. I just play saxophone. I did play flute for a second, but no. But you know, so that was my experience in high school. He just, you know, wanted me to become a good reader and be able to play the saxophone well. And, you know, whenever I'd ask him something about jazz, like he'd just be like, you know, you just listen, you know, that's what I used to do. He's like, I'd just come home like from school and like turn on the radio and just play along with the radio for like 3 hours. Like that's how we learn jazz.
Which is probably smart, essentially. That's how.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like he was putting stuff in you that you could actually teach, you know, that would be useful throughout your whole career. The reading, your pitch, your articulation, dynamics.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. At the time, though, you know, I was a kid and I thought I knew everything, you know. And I didn't want to do any of those things. I just wanted to do jazz. I just want to play jazz,
Yeah.
So, but I learned so much from him. So that gave me like a super solid foundation, so. But yeah, so those are like my two main teachers. My teacher that I had from the time I was 11 years old until I graduated high school, and then Charlie Banakis. And then I went to Berkeley. And my teachers at Berkeley, I had some amazing teachers. I had this guy named Hal Crook. He was like probably my most influential teacher at Berkeley, probably the most influential teacher for many people that have gone to Berkeley. Are you familiar with Hal, Jeremy?
Yeah, absolutely.
So trombonist, he was in like the Tonight Show band and wrote for the Tonight Show band. He also toured with Phil Woods for like 8 years, just an incredible trombone player, incredible musician, incredible piano player, good drummer, could just he played everything. And, his whole thing was like, so to get into one of his ensembles, you had to audition. He only had 3 ensembles, I think, at the time when I was at Berkeley. So there were like 3 saxophone spots in the whole school,
Yeah.
So it was like a big thing. Like, you're like, yo, you're in a Hal ensemble. It was like,
you got the stuff.
You in a Hal ensemble, So yeah, so I studied with him, and he taught me a lot about how to pace yourself when you're soloing. He was less about like vocabulary and more about how do you create an idea and stick to that idea and kind of tell a story throughout your solo rather than just kind of running lines or, that sort of thing. So that was like a huge takeaway from him. And also just like how do you play with a band? How do you react? How do you interact between, the drummer and the saxophonist? And different ways of thinking about how can the pianist be influenced by what the drummer's playing on the snare drum, and how can, and vice versa, just that whole, sort of the way that Miles's band, played in the 60s, that
like anti-notes.
Yeah, exactly. Just creating a vibe through listening and this experience of really trying to play together,
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if you know, I had Tucker on yesterday. Tucker.
Oh yeah, no, I saw Tucker's a really good friend of mine, man, and one of my favorite saxophonists too, man. I love that guy.
Man. So we were talking about that yesterday as well. I always whenever I'm teaching or doing instruction, I like to focus on that element right there, not so much any of the technical aspects.
Absolutely.
But more so the experience, the interaction, the listening.
Absolutely.
The response. You encourage somebody else in the band to do something just by making them aware that you're listening.
Absolutely.
So intently, so.
Absolutely. I mean, it's if you're having a conversation with someone and you can tell they're not listening to you,
right.
The conversation's not going to go anywhere, Yeah. Yeah,
it's really stimulating to be in an ensemble when everybody is listening to that degree and everybody's done their work ahead of time, so you can just focus on that moment.
Absolutely.
So I always like to stress that whenever I'm doing instructional stuff. So what would you say was your best? Obviously, you play with Arturo, but what's your best professional experience that you had?
I don't know, man.
Like gig, you know what I mean?
Gig.
Yeah.
My best gig. I really don't know. I've been pretty lucky, man. There's been a lot of great ones. There's been, I guess sometimes your first, your very first big things kind of stick out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, man, like, I mean, the very first thing that was like kind of like, holy, you know, let's keep it G-rated, holy moly, you know, that I was very, you know, kind of like, wow, like this is like a crazy experience, was the monk competition, man. I was like 21 years old or 20. I think I was 21. I think I just turned 21.
Right.
I was 21 years old, and here I am, like, you know, with 10 of like, you know, people like Seamus was already someone who like, I had all of his like,
Yeah.
you know, he was
doing crisscross albums by then, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's like maybe like close to 10 years older than me. I think he might be like 48 or something. He looks really young, but
yeah.
But you know, but you know, like I had been listening to him already for like, you know, for multiple years, and like had his albums and stuff, and I was like in a competition with this guy, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, so first of all, just the people that were in the competition were intimidating, and then to top it off, like, you know, I was flown down to DC. And like I had like a really early flight, and then like right when I got there, like I had to go to like the rehearsal, and in the rehearsal it was Carl Allen, Bob Hurst, like an amazing bass player, and oh man, who was playing piano? Oh man, I'm totally Eric Reed,
Yeah.
pianist, you know, for Winton and stuff for a long time. So is those cats, and like it was like, okay, like the door opened, and like the guy who was like producing the monk competition was like, okay man, you got 20 minutes, you know, the band's yours. You know, I was like 21 and had never like encountered like any, I hadn't been to school yet, you know, I hadn't like done any like really major, like huge high profile gigs where like, you know, so like, you know, I'm just like all of a sudden, like here I am, like telling Carl Allen and Eric Reed what to do.
All right, guys.
Yeah. With the arrangements that like I wrote for this competition, you know? So that was intense. And then the next day, like standing on that stage with Wayne Shorter, Joshua Redman, George Coleman, Branford Marsalis, and James Spaulding in the front row.
Wow.
Just, you know,
hanging out,
listening to you, judging you. So
that's why they're there. Yeah.
It's a competition. It's not like, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't win. I didn't make it past the semifinals. I was one of the 10 guys that went there, and then there were I think 5 or 4 semifinalists. I didn't make it past that first thing. But
wow.
Anyways, but like playing in front of those guys, that was the first like experience that it was like whoa, this is surreal. Like, you know, and then you know, the next big thing that I kind of did was you know, like right after I graduated Berkeley, I got a call from the singer who I worked with in Boston. Her name's Robin McKell. She's a great singer. You know, we had worked like doing like just like her gigs and like some weddings and stuff like that. She put out an album on this label, Cheap Lullaby Records, and it ended up it just went nuts in Europe. She sold like 200,000 copies of this album. And like, you know, like literally like she did this record. She came in second in the monk competition, the vocal competition, the year Gretchen Parlato won. So she used the money to make a big band record. She made the record. It went like viral, you know, in Europe. Like people were just like crazy about this record. So all of a sudden, like a management company called her, like just like kind of like literally like it's like one of those overnight success kind of things. So like very quickly, she like had to put a band together and go on tour. So because her record was doing so well. So she was like, hey, do you want to come tour with me this summer in France for like, you know, 2 months? I was like, yes. Yes. So she's like, okay, my musical director will be in touch with you like in like in like a couple days. So then this guy, Alain Malay, an incredible pianist, he was in Paul Simon's band for like 3 or 4 years. Just incredible jazz pianist, producer. He worked with Madeline Peru and all sorts of people. He contacted me, was like, hey man, so Robin says she wants to on the gig. Cool. Just checking, you play flute, right? And I was like, yep. I had never played the flute before. I had 2 months before the first gig. So I was like, yep, I play flute. He's like, okay, cool. I'll be sending the music soon. So that day I went, I bought a flute. I got a teacher. I started practicing flute like hours a day. Just like, oh my God, man, that is a brutal instrument to get into.
Yeah, it is.
From the saxophone, like, oh my God. So I got it good enough. Like I went undetected, sort of,
Right.
I went undetected, like, but the whole time, like I couldn't really enjoy myself on the first like tour because like there was this one song that we played. It was a version of this song called Go to Hell. I think Nina Simone sang it, and Robin did like an updated version thing. So it started off with harmon muted trumpet and flute in unison, this line with like hand percussion. And we were playing like our first gig, my first gig with her was at the Olympia Theater in Paris. It's a like 3,500 or 4,000 seat theater. It's like John Coltrane played there. Like it's a heavy, and it was a huge audience. And the first song of the night that we played was this song.
Very exposed.
On flute. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. But yeah, that gig was like my first like real kind of introduction to like, being like a touring musician. And I was in her band for like 5 or 6 years. 6 years. I did a lot of touring with her, like mostly in Europe. We went to Israel once, but mostly France, Spain, Germany. I mean, she had like a huge following in France. So it was amazing, man. We played all the like major European festivals. Like I did Marciac twice, like Jean Lapine, like all those big festivals. And it was just an incredible introduction to kind of being a touring musician. So yeah, that was my first like really like kind of big touring gig.
Do you still dig the road, or I mean, do you like being on the road? I know some guys don't.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. There's aspects of it that make it very difficult. I have a daughter, so that can be very difficult. Trying to when you have to be away for a while, you miss things. So that's really difficult. But no, I love the road. I still love touring. I can't wait to get back on the road.
Me too. I know some older musicians say that, because I mean, I have kids as well. So, I mean, it's difficult, but I still really like it. I mean, even if the conditions aren't ideal, you got like, we're taking a van instead of a plane this time. And, you don't get much sleep. The hotel has cockroaches, but yeah, just to get out and experience different people and food. I always enjoy that part of it.
Totally, man. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like, originally when I got into music, like I just loved it. It's just like something I loved, I never thought about touring when I was like, when I first got into it. But then, then when that became a thing, is like, whoa, like I have this like golden ticket to like the world.
Yeah.
Like literally I mean, who gets to do that? Like I've literally been to like, I don't know, like 30 or 40 countries, unless you're like extremely wealthy or like some sort of like, work for some sort of like, I don't know what you do, like some sort of business where you travel a lot, you just get like being a musician that tours, like you get this experience that like no one else gets. And you know what, even if you had a lot of money, you wouldn't get the same experience. Cause like when you're a touring musician and you show up to a country to perform, like, you know, especially if you're like with like a high profile act like Arturo or something.
It's nice.
It's like, you know, the mayor of the city like that you're playing in like shows up and takes you out to dinner and like shows you like all the beautiful things that like you wouldn't find in like a tour guide book, you know, like, you know, you get an inside perspective of like what that place is like and what the people are like, you know, whereas if you're just a tourist, like, you know, let's face it too. I mean, you know, and you're from America, you just might get a side eye, you know?
Right. It's like somebody going to New York City and they only go to Times Square.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Like you don't like go, you forget, you miss Brooklyn, you know, you just don't go there. And like, that's where like half the great stuff is, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I've just, man, I can't even tell you like one of it's my very first experience in Europe was a tour in Italy. It wasn't a tour. It's really like just a sit down thing where like we did a week, 2 weeks of concerts at the Spoleto Festival. The Spoleto Festival is actually like it's like a classical music festival, but they had like some jazz. So when I was there, I went with this guy, Adam Birnbaum, the pianist I was telling you about earlier. And I was 24. So it was like my first time in Europe. And we're there for 2 weeks and we got to like just stay in like the city for 2 weeks. It was while the World Cup was going on and Italy was in the World Cup. So it was like the 2 weeks leading up to the World Cup. So I was like in this like Italian city, like while they were like winning, it was like unbelievable. And every single night that they'd win, like people were in the streets, like literally like lighting off like quarter sticks of dynamite. Like it wasn't just like fireworks. It was something more intense than that. And like, you know, like when they'd win, like there was all these piazzas, these like kind of circular like centers of town, like in the mountains. And like people would be like just driving around in circles and there'd be like 10 people hanging off the cars. And they'd be driving like full speed. I was just like, how is no one dying or getting hurt, you know? So like, you know, just being in like a country, like in a moment like that, you know, where like just something really big is happening. That was incredible. And like, and in the city that we were in Spoleto, it was like a Roman, is it like an old Roman city? So there was like a Roman aqueduct that connected from like the very top piazza to this like mountain path. And then if you hiked up the mountain, there was like a Franciscan monastery that like apparently like was like built by like, you know, the descendants of like St. Francis. And it had been there for like, you know, just like 1,000 years or something, you know, and it was still active. It was like in the middle of the woods. You know, and you just kind of like come upon these things that are just incredible. Anyways.
Like out of a movie. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was in Mexico City during the run up to Dia de los Muertos.
Whoa, that must
have been intense, dude. It was so crazy. I was down there touring with this band from Argentina, and I mean, right, like you said, just some of the craziest stuff, man. I mean, it was just. It's much more civilized than you would think. Like America, you know, portrays Mexico as like this, you know, crazy place, but Mexico City is kind of like New York City in many ways.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just as it's an urban center, but I mean, every club. I mean, there was just so much craziness going on. There's like a lady we was walking down the street. I saw this lady. She was like, she had like a mini bodega set up. You know, selling loose cigarettes and gum and all this stuff. She had a baby. She had a baby out there, like smoking, like like a young baby. Yeah, I mean, like, it was lots of craziness.
Yeah. So what else?
So technically, when you're getting ready to get the horn together, like what type of stuff are you working on nowadays? Who you checking out?
Man, I've listened to like a lot of Mark Turner, a lot of Chris Potter. I listen to like my friends, you know, this guy, Mike Thomas, he's a good friend of mine. Great alto player. You know, a lot of different things. I really like Walter Smith's new work, you know. He's now my boss at Berkeley. He's the chair of the saxophone department, which is cool. One of my bosses. And who else? I mean, man, like so much stuff. But yeah, that's what's been in the you know, in the queue for a little while. How about you, man?
Kind of a little bit of the same. I've kind of been digging back into some older stuff that I was into. I've been getting into Kenny Garrett.
Yeah.
Or his songbook album. I used to listen to that a lot.
Me too, man. Me too.
Yeah.
Man, can I ask how old are you, Jeremy?
I'm 41.
Okay, so we're like essentially the same age. So like, Songbook came out when I was like a senior in high school, and I listened to that. I listened to that album like every day for like a year, man. It was like, that was like the model. I was like, man, I want to play it. And to me, it sounded like back then, I was like, man, he's like kind of doing like the thing that Train did with like his like classic quartet, but like a little bit updated, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Just that intensity, man. Like the way that Tane plays too, and Kenny Kirkland, you know?
That one, right? There's a couple albums, the Triology album,
Oof,
the Songbook album, and then the Coltrane, the Pursuance album, right?
Those three. Those are, and the other ones, man, like I haven't listened to as much, but literally those are my three Kenny albums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Brecker too. I'm like always into Brecker.
Do you know what, man? I have to make a confession. I've never, and this is like unbelievable as a saxophonist, I never have like thoroughly checked out Brecker.
Really?
Yep.
I hear some of his influences in your playing.
I know, and it's because I probably listen to the same people that he did.
Right.
You know, but I literally have like, he's probably the person I've listened to the very least of all the like, you know, very like, you know, amazing saxophonists, you know.
Yeah, Brecker.
I need to, because like I've been checking out some of his music lately, and I'm just like, man, there's just so much in there. I mean, just so
I take so much from him, not just from a jazz aspect. Like a lot of his pop stuff that he did, like he played with Cameo. You know what I mean? He's on that Candy record, and dude, his album,
his that's what I was gonna say. His solo on what's the song?
Don't Let Me Be Lonely.
No, that's great too. But what's
The Nearness of You?
Still Lonely. Still something after all these years. What is it called? Thank you, Steve Savage. Still crazy after all these years.
Yeah, it's still crazy after all these years.
Yes. That solo, man, is just like, man. It's unbelievable. And I love that, man, because that's kind of like my aesthetic as a musician. There's a lot of people who are like, oh man, like I play jazz. I'm a jazz musician, you know. That's just never, actually for like a very limited time, that was my aesthetic. From the time I was like 15 until like 18 or 19, that was my aesthetic. It's like only wanted to play jazz. I wasn't interested in anything else. But then like shortly after that, man, like I kind of just got into like everything, and I was just like, you know, I just want to be able to like kind of communicate like any style of music through the saxophone, you know. And Brecker, man, that's like, you can tell that like that's his aesthetic too, man. I mean, the way he plays on that, it's just so appropriate and so beautiful, and he makes so much out of like so few notes. It's just a beautiful thing. And he can do that other thing where he like just shredding, you know. It's like, you know. Yeah.
He's definitely one of my favorites. I mean, there's so many albums that he's on, and just so many different vibes. Like when he was with Steps Ahead, his sound there.
Right.
Like you know what I'm saying? Like I take something from that phase, and then there's like those really hot years in the mid 90s where he's doing Tales from the Hudson. And, you know, a little bit later with the wide angles and time is of the essence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, my God.
Yeah. He's incredible, man. He's incredible.
Definitely my dude.
He's incredible. But yeah, I mean, but also like, you know, I mean, I definitely like with my students and stuff, like I definitely encourage them to transcribe, like, you know, all the, you know, just the greats, you know, the greats that like came before all of the modern players, you know.
Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Who's on my Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, for tenor players.
Like 5 of them or something.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
How many are there? How many presidents?
There's 4.
Okay, there's 4. Okay. So Mount Rushmore, John Coltrane.
Okay.
Sonny Rollins. It has to be tenor. Let's do tenor because that makes it easier. It makes it easier because then
we can do an alto one too.
Let's say tenor Mount Rushmore, John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, Dexter. John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, Dexter. This is hard, man. Either Stan Getz, Johnny Griffin, Sonny Stitt, or it's hard. It's really hard to pick 4.
I know.
Yeah. How about you? Can you pick 4?
Yeah, if I had to. I mean, obviously, for me, Brecker would be in there. It would be Coltrane. And I would say Joe Henderson.
Joe Henderson.
Yeah. Oh man. It maybe it's a tough one.
Yeah, see,
I'd have to say Dexter.
Yeah.
Just because of his personality. You know what I mean? Like just what he literally spoke through the horn, you know what I mean?
Absolutely,
he had
man.
so much humor and just emotion in his playing. Like he was, played the best bebop stuff. The lines, the language was great, but just his inflection, the way he, the attack and decay and the Dexter thing,
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Should we talk about like saxophone or anything? Or?
Yeah, we should probably dig into some sax stuff.
Yeah.
So, in terms of, let's just start with the gear. What are you playing on? You got to.
I am playing on. Let's see. I got a Selmer.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a Paris model because there's no engraving. It's like kind of like kind of rare, I guess. Apparently, so my repair guy tells me. It's actually close, and I didn't realize this, until like later. It's close to the Brecker model. It's like an 86,000, 98 or 95.
Wow.
So it's like pretty close to the horn that he played. I love this thing. It's like, definitely one of the best tenors I've ever played. And like many people say the same thing when they play it. It's just really responsive, really great. This is I never have been a neck person. Like this is the first time I've ever played like another neck. This is a Boston Sax Shop neck. My buddy Jack makes these, and they're just incredible. I love it. It just kind of opens up the sound. It makes things, just more resonant, more responsive. So I've been playing this for maybe 2 years or so. And then I have an old Autolink. It's a double ring. Double ring Autolink. It's like the one that Train played on the album Blue Train.
Yeah.
I almost sold it a few years back. Bill Pierce, the old chair of the saxophone department at Berkeley, I think he has one, and he wanted to try mine. And I was like, yeah, sure, because I had switched to a rubber mouthpiece for a second. And he was like, man, he's like, you want to sell that? And I almost sold it for $2,500.
Wow. Yeah.
But I didn't because I recorded an album. I recorded an album on this, and a friend of mine was like, man, you shouldn't get rid of a mouthpiece that you recorded one of your own albums on. And also another, the same friend was like, and man, it's just you just have a it's like, it's got a thing, you know, don't get rid of it, you know? So anyways, I didn't get rid of it. And I'm glad I didn't, because that rubber mouthpiece, like I literally played for like 6 months and I was back to this. So I've been playing on this for like 10 years or so.
What was the rubber piece? You remember?
Yeah, it's I still have it. It's like an old Autolink slant.
Yeah. Good piece.
Slant. Yeah, they're both great pieces.
Yeah.
Both great pieces. And then I have this old ligature, which I love.
I messaged you that about that not too long ago.
Yeah, it's an old ligature, and it's like it just frees up the reed, man. It just, you know, it just makes the reed vibrate a little bit more. I love it. Yeah. I love it. And then I use like usually 3.5 or 4s. I use Boston Sax Shop reeds.
Okay.
And the mouthpiece itself is like a 6-star. It's not that open. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a 6-star.
Original 6-star.
No. I had it worked on. The rails were like all uneven and stuff like that. But I think I think the opening is original. I just had it I basically had it evened out a little bit.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. It's great. I love it. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What like in terms of like warm-ups, what are you doing when you get the horn together initially, just to get everything moving?
I can show you. So I have I had it down to a science when I was on the road a lot, because like, you know, a lot of times it's so important, because like you just don't have a lot of time to practice, you know? So like to have like a really good warm up where like you can kind of like just get everything working really well in a short period of time is super important. And I think that's like important for anybody. So what I would do is this. First, I do matching exercises. So for our listeners who don't know what that is, I basically take the note. So I'll start on like B flat, for example. And then I finger like low B flat, but I make middle B flat sound. The saxophone is based on this thing called the overtone series, which is like, you know, just a principle that exists in nature. And basically every single note that you can possibly play contains every note of the chromatic scale. And it's kind of crazy. It's a physics principle, really. So if I play a low B flat, right, that's a low B flat. You can't really perceive it, but within that low B flat, there's also, and here, I'll stand up so you can see my fingers. I'm literally just playing a low B flat the whole time. Right. So all of those notes exist within just that one low B flat. And that's the same with every note on the saxophone or every note on any instrument. So in order to like achieve like a balanced sound, it's really important to like have control of those overtones, to be able to like, you know, like if you think of it as like an EQ dial, right? Like if you had EQ on a stereo, you'd have like treble, bass, you know. So the upper overtones, you could consider the treble, the lower overtones, you consider the bass. You want a good mix of those things for your sound to be balanced. So practicing overtones is really, really important. And how I start off my practice session is with matching exercises. So, one other thing, the overtones themselves, those notes tend to be more rich than the actual fingered notes. So the reason why I practice matching is because I want my fingered notes to sound more like the overtones. So I do something like this. So I start on B flat. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to like hear the sound of the, I want to get the tone of the overtone B flat to be present in my fingered B flat. So what I'm doing is I'm listening to the sound of that overtone B flat really carefully and trying to like see like, okay, what is it about that note that's different about the fingered one? And I'm sensing in my throat or my larynx what I need to do to kind of achieve that. Because those overtones are basically achieved by manipulating this muscle in the throat called the larynx. That's really tough to feel and become familiar with and pinpoint. One thing I talk about with my students is that you can think about the larynx as like, if you say the syllable E, what happens to your throat? It closes a little bit. And also when you say the syllable E, your tongue actually goes up into the back of your throat. So those two things are basically the mechanism that makes that low pitch go up to the different to the different partials of the overtone series, right? So I basically start my warm up like this. I start off like that, and I do that on B flat, B, C, and C sharp. And then I play all the overtones all the way up to usually like high F or G on B flat, like above altissimo G.
Right.
And then I try to like lip slur down. So. Right. So that's how I start off. And then I do like one thing that I've been working on a lot, just in the last like few years is just getting altissimo really, really happening. Yeah. And being able to make the altissimo register like just as fluid as my regular register. Still a work in progress, but like what I do is I do this. I do very like the simplest exercises, like the things that you did in like grade school. That's what I do just to work on intonation. So. And I play them in octaves so I can hear the first octave, which is probably going to be much more in tune, especially as you go up. So I have something to match it to. So I do that, and I do it all the way up to like, high D, high E flat, altissimo. And then I do things that like kind of connect my normal range to the altissimo range. So I'll go up to like, I'll play scales up to the 9, and I'll do the same thing in octaves. So like stuff like that, just to kind of like, just get some like, just these are just very basic things, and you want to first get basic things like in the altissimo register. So I do that. What else do I do? Diatonics, like diatonic seventh chords, very basic things. Mm-hmm. And I try to take that stuff up to the altissimo too. So. I definitely had all that stuff like better like a while ago. I haven't been doing like a thorough warm up like every day, to be honest.
How's COVID been treating you?
I've been okay, man. I've been okay. I've been very lucky. I've been very fortunate to have like some awesome private students. So that's been like, that was like the saving grace for me, because like when this hit, I was teaching at Berkeley, but for the last 3 years, my schedule was all based on touring. So I was teaching one class, last in March when this happened, because like I basically like, I mean, honestly, like for the last 3 years, what I wanted to do, if I had like the choice, it would have been great to like press a pause button on Berkeley and just come back to it later. But you can't do that. Like things don't work like that. It'll be gone. So like I worked it out with my boss so that I could like basically teach like one class a semester, just so that like I'm like still in the system. And it was really difficult. Like, I mean, I was taking red eyes home like every Sunday night to like get back for that Monday class, you know, and like, you know, just coordinating subs. I had like, you know, spreadsheets of like where I'd be and when I'd be, you know, just trying to like make sure like all my stuff was covered. But anyways, like when the pandemic happened, my income was like pretty much 100% based on touring, you know, at that point in performing, and Berkeley was just like, you know, one class is not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So you know, so basically when that happened, like I was like, I remember the moment, man. I was like, I was giving a midterm at Berkeley. I just played at Jazz Alley in Seattle, and Seattle was like the first place where the pandemic really started to hit. So like I took the red eye to come home to teach in the morning. I was taking the red eye to get back on Monday, and I got an email from Berkeley saying like, oh, if you have been to like, you know, any of these places, you know, and Seattle was on the list, you can't come into Berkeley. I was like, are you kidding me? I just took the red eye, you know? So, you know, and COVID was, we were just starting to find out about it. So anyways, I ended up like, while I was like giving my midterm, I like made a post on like, cause I could see the writing on the wall. I was like, man, I was like, the world is about to shut down. I just knew it, you know? So I made a post on Instagram saying, hey, like, you know, I'm going to be like, you know, like around a little bit more. I'd love to like, you know, teach a little bit more. And people signed up, man. So like, you know, I've been lucky, man. I've had like a full studio for like since March, basically, since April.
Right.
You know, it took a little while to build up, but I have great students from like all around the world, of all ages, of all, you know, I've mostly like pretty advanced students. And then I have 2 beginners, which is like cool. It's like really fun. It's kind of fun for me because like, you know, I go from like, you know, talking about like, you know, triad pairs and like, you know, how to play over like, you know, minor 7 sharp, you know, like, you know, crazy harmony stuff to like, you know, teaching a little kid like the Rocky theme song, you know. So it's kind of a nice like little mix, you know, kind of makes it interesting for me. So I've been okay, man. I've been very lucky. You know, at first I suffered financially, you know, for like a couple months, and then like I was able to like, you know, kind of get the teaching thing happening, and it's made it okay, you know. But I'm starting to go a little nuts, man. I really miss performing. I miss playing like a lot, you know.
That's what it's all about. Like all the work, all the sacrifice, all the practice, all the study. It's only in service of doing the thing.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And you know what? The thing that, to be perfectly honest, man, the thing that gets difficult is that, like, you know, for me, for like just such a long time now, like all of my practicing has been based on like, all right, what's going on this week? What am I? Oh, I'm playing with Arturo this night. I got this other gig this night. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, what do I have to practice based on the gigs that I'm doing? You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, now it's like, it's like being back in high school. It's just like, okay, like what is there to practice for? Well, I better find, you know, something, you know? So yeah, it's you know, keeping like the motivation to like stay like on top of your game and stuff. Like it becomes a little difficult in this moment, you know? And,
absolutely,
you know, so yeah, for me, like, you know, luckily I have some students that are like very advanced, that are learning like, you know, hard solos, and like we're working on, you know, some of the stuff that I'm teaching, like it's like kind of like, oh cool, like let me let me like kind of like brush up on this thing, kind of work on this stuff too a little bit, you know. So yeah, like I've been getting inspiration from my students and stuff, and you know, I've had some recordings. We're doing a record with Arturo. coming up, and I'm going to record everything remotely. They're tracking like in a couple weeks, and then I'm going to get the tracks like the next week. I did a record with this band that I'm in called Unisphere, which was amazing. Oh my God. So it was like, so the first time it's like the only time I've played jazz in like in a year. Wow. Was recording that record, and we kind of rolled the dice. I mean, we all were kind of being careful, but everybody was coming in we had the trumpet player coming in from Colorado, some guys coming from New York, so.
Yeah. You just have to take your chances.
What's that?
You just have to take your chances a little bit.
We took our chances, but we were also as careful as we possibly could be, and everybody's cool. We did that back in November. Right. So that will be coming out, like, I think in September on this record label. So yeah, so just I've been able to do some recording. I did like a lot of remote recording, like at the beginning of the pandemic. I did this, like, I started doing this thing like that I came up with called the Cherokee Challenge. Like,
I think I saw that you were doing like all 12 or something like that.
I did, and I ended off like basically on the key of E flat. I got up to E flat. I did like 5 keys. Then my daughter was with me full time for like 5 months. She's 9, so it's just me and her. Yeah. So I was like single dadding like hardcore, and like the Cherokee Challenge just kind of tanked.
It got too challenging.
Yeah, I got too challenging. So yeah, I want to get back to that. But yeah, that was fun, man. I did all these like different versions of Cherokee, like, and I did some remote recording. I did like one that was like kind of like a samba version. Then I did like this like crazy like kind of kind of fusion Cherokee, So like at first I was just going to do like 12 Cherokee and 12 keys, but then it like grew into like this thing like, oh, let me write like a different style of music for like each Cherokee, So I started doing that. That was fun, man. That kind of pushed me creatively a little bit. So
man, you want to play a little bit before we get out of here?
Sure. Yeah. What you want to play?
I don't know. Maybe Cherokee.
Let's play some Cherokee. So how are we going to do this? Because we got,
Let's do like, we can do 8s, yeah?
Just a cappella.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it won't, it won't be like totally in time, but
yeah,
we can just do, let's do it.
Okay. So you can take like the first A, I'll take the second A, and you go into the bridge. I'll take the last A.
Sounds good. Okay. So I'll play the last head just to get into it.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
You were taking the last A into the blowing.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Jeremy, you sound killing, man.
Thanks, man. You too.
That was fun. You know, I don't know how that hasn't happened. Like I've never traded like that on Zoom before.
Yeah. I mean, because it's sort of tough for us to play at the same time. We tried. I think the first session we did,
you can't.
Was with Sam. Yeah, it just with the delay, it didn't really work out. But trading is, you know, even though the time's kind of funny, it still kind of works. You know,
trading works, man. Yeah. Man, you sound great.
Thanks,
what are you playing, man? What kind of mouthpiece you got?
This is a Theo Wane Amma. Cool. It's his first old piece. I was playing on a Gaia for about 8 years, and then I got a chance to get this one. It's slightly brighter than the Gaia with his ligature that comes with it, and I got a 59 Mark 6, like a 80,000.
Man, do you live in Florida?
Yeah, I live in Clearwater.
Did you ever work? Have you ever worked for Jerry Bennett? You must have at this point. No. Okay, because he does all the big, like, you know, this is the cat that I used to work for when I was like, I worked for him until I was like 30, but like I stopped doing it because I was doing other stuff, but he does tons of gigs down there, man. He does all the Palm Beach, like, you know, I mean, but I know we're still recording. Never mind. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll have to wrap.
we'll talk about it later. Yeah.
I used to work with this wedding band, so I mean, we worked down there a lot at the Breakers and Trump's Place and all. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But Jerry does. He I think he's down there a lot in the winter, you know, normally. But I don't think, are there gigs now? No. Is there gigs in Florida?
No. Not ones that I'm taking necessarily.
Okay.
There are with us, Jeremy.
Well, no. Yeah, I mean, there are some gigs.
I'm joking, man.
Yeah, there's some stuff with Clearwater Jazz Holiday, but they're done in a totally safe and socially distanced way. Everybody's been affected, you know, the same way. But you know, that's why this thing is so valuable.
Totally, man.
Clearwater Jazz Holiday is doing, because you know, there really aren't a lot of outlets for us to just, you know, get off a little bit, you know, and just, you know, keep the idea of the music for the younger generation. That's so important. It's not just for our own nourishment, even though we're like a part. Even more so now, it's important that the kids who don't have the life experience, who don't have the playing experience, they're like, this is their time to learn and develop. And so anything that we can do to aid and assist in that effort, man, is like even more important at this time, man. So many thanks for participating in this, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to be here, man. Great to chat with you. Great to hear you play too, man. Yeah,
Mike, we are really grateful for you taking the time. I thought that there was some really, really good stuff that came out in that conversation that's going to resonate really well with a lot of the young people that do follow these and watch them, particularly about your experiences with music at a young age, and just when we got into the warm-up stuff and, you know, some thoughts about touring and traveling. I just thought there was a lot of really great paths that conversation took. So I appreciate you and Jeremy for helping to create something special that will be now added to the studio resource for people to enjoy going forward. And on that note, I just want to remind folks that at clearwaterjazz.com, you can access the education and outreach page that will take you to a variety of different resources, but check out the studio for sure. And that archives not only the Conversation With series, but also a What I Love About series where musicians and educators sort of do a deep dive into players that have influenced them. These are jazz legends and other players, and they're really fun. And then there are these general topics that, everything from why listening to music is important to others. And then there's instrument specific segments that break up, and we've got pretty much every instrument covered. And so please check out those resources. In addition to that, you might have fun taking a look at the Stop Time page. So this is the Stop Time series with our longtime education partner, Frank Williams III, 40-year plus educator, really unique style. And he really starts with the Civil War era influences and talks about people and places that influence and contributed to the art form of jazz. And they're done in these really small segments, anywhere from 7 to 20 minutes long, depending on who's covered. And they're told in Frank's really unique style. And Jeremy knows this. I mean, you never know what you're getting with Frank, but it's always a lot of fun and special. Really what we should be doing, Jeremy, is recording the time right before we hit record with Frank, because there's always like a 20-minute, story about what we're talking about that he can't get into because there's so much of it. Either he knew the person or it's like this, what's that, 6 Degrees or Kevin Bacon type of thing. It's sort of like there's always something so much fun. But my point is it's a really great way of learning about the human, part and component to these people. And you can also listen to all of these segments on the Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions podcast, available wherever you stream. So just type the Young Lions in there and it should pop up. So on behalf of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, I just want to thank Mike and thank Jeremy for making this a very special session. And I hope both of you are back with us in the future. And for everybody participating today or listening or watching in the future, stay safe out there, keep playing, keep being creative, and we hope to see you back with us very soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us, man.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks. Thank you guys.
All right. Take care. Signing off.
All right, y'all.
See ya.